You vegan, vegetarian, veg-curious, and you want to make an impact, this video is just for you. I want to share an incredible, powerful clip from someone that I deeply respect who's trying to make an impact. He created the book and wrote the book, How to Create a Vegan World, and I think it's great for everyone to listen to, whether you believe in that or not, whether you want to make the world a better place or not. This is definitely the video for you, so I'm going to share that clip right below, and then stay tuned to the end because I have a little message for you as well.
Okay, it's good to be here in such a wonderful venue. I'll be talking about 4 ingredients that I think the vegan, animal rights, plant-based movement can use more of in order to be more effective and more productive. And these are open-mindedness, empathy, rationality, and positivity. And I'll go over them one by one. First of all, open-mindedness. If you are like me, and if you're vegan today, you spent quite some time of your life in a certain box that we could call carnism. And while you were in that box, in that ideological box, you were thinking that eating meat was normal, natural, necessary. And you didn't really question that. But at some point, maybe you started to get a little bit restless. You see the box move a little bit. And at a certain point, the light went on, the box opens, and you jump out as a vegan or a vegetarian, and you start to think and to talk about meat and its dangers or risks or problems for the environment and for health and for animals and other things. And then maybe, again, if you're like me, there was a situation where you thought that maybe you ended up in another box, and we can call this box the box of veganism. And when you're in this box, it's a bit the same thing. You have a number of fixed ideas about veganism, about being vegan, about how to do advocacy, fixed ideas that you're not questioning anymore. And maybe in the movement, you're also confronted with the idea sometimes that it's not okay to ask questions. And this cartoon illustrates it very well, I think. This one guy is saying, I'm mostly vegan, but, and the other one says, if there's a but, you're not vegan. I don't know if you recognize that. Like a problem with asking questions. And I think that being vegan means giving up animal products. It doesn't mean giving up thinking. And if we give up thinking, we are subject to dogma. And dogma is a very dangerous thing. If we stop questioning things, we are being dogmatic. And being dogmatic prevents us from improving. And we have to improve because the challenge ahead of us is so huge. Let there be no misunderstanding. If you have to be in a box, it's better to be in this box than in this box. But it's still better to be not in any box at all. Just one example about being in a box or about having fixed ideas. Many of you will be against GMOs, for instance. But do you know why? Have you ever thought about that? Have you considered that deeply? Have you read about that? Have you considered that you might be biased? Have you considered that whoever has a different opinion, who has a pro-GMO opinion, is maybe not paid by the industry or anything? So maybe you were like me, or you are like me in the sense that like you just copy your opinions from whatever your peers around you think about these issues. So GMOs is just one example of that. Secondly, empathy. I think as vegans, we are very good at empathy. This is Anita Krajins from the Save movement in Toronto. She is watering a pig for which she was trialed and later acquitted. But this is a very nice, iconic picture of us being empathic towards pigs, in this case. And I think when we're empathic, we're mostly empathic towards pigs and cows and chickens. But it's much more challenging for us to be empathic towards meat eaters, or hunters, or, God forbid, bullfighters. And maybe you're saying now, what? Are you asking me to be empathic for those people? Seriously? We have to have empathy towards these people? And I'm sure some of you can think of groups, human groups of people that we absolutely should not have any empathy for. For instance, these guys, white supremacists. Pretty horrible people, at first sight at least. And I think that being empathic towards people is always appropriate. Let me give you, in this case, the example of Daryl Davis, who's a black activist, and who spent his life, part of his life, his young life, outside of the US, and he came back in the US, when he was confronted with racism for the first time. He was walking around in the 4th of July parade somewhere in the US. And outside of the country, he had never been confronted with racism before. But there in that parade, people started to throw cans and all kinds of things at him. And for the first time in his life, he was confronted with racism. And he was fascinated. And he asked, how can these people hate me if they don't even know me? And he realized that he also didn't know them. And what he did was he actually built relationships with members of the Ku Klux Klan, racists. And sometimes it was dangerous, sometimes there were guns involved, but he managed to befriend many of these people and have conversations with them. And the result was that over 200 people, as a result of his relationship with them, left the Klan. They gave up their beliefs. They weren't that racist anymore, at least. And as a symbol of that, they gave him their robe, their Ku Klux Klan robe. So he had results. He had results. This is a documentary about him on Netflix, which I recommend. He had results because he had an open mind. He was listening. He was asking questions to people. He was trying to understand them. And I think this is almost always the best way to influence people. It's not to isolate them and to distance ourselves from them and to alienate them further. But if we want to have an impact on people, even people which we don't like or whose views we don't like, we have to get to know them. We have to be in their shoes, understand what it is to be in their shoes. We have to talk to them, listen to them, build a relationship with them. Some tips to be more empathic, first of all, is to understand the situation that we're in. One way to answer this question, why do most people eat meat, is like this. Most people eat meat because most people eat meat. People do what other people do. They get the cues on how to behave from how other people behave. This is the adoption of innovation curve that is normally used for or to explain the adoption of technology, and it segments people into different categories. If you don't have a smartphone at this point, you would be considered a laggard. If you had one already 15 years ago, you were an innovator or an early adopter. In the field of food, if you're vegan or even vegetarian today, all of you are in this segment of innovators, the top 1 or 2% of the population. And you have to understand that all these other segments and all the other people will be later. That's the way it goes. In a way, we are the low-hanging fruit. We are the people that it was easy to reach for some reason. Maybe because we have more empathy, maybe because it's easier for us to be disciplined and put that empathy into practice. I don't know, but somehow we are a bit different, and you have to appreciate the difference among people. Secondly, to be more empathic is to remember that you don't have all the information. You never know everything about people. You can't look inside their minds. And remembering this, remembering that you don't have all the info, can help you calm down and be more empathic when you get irritated. For instance, I get irritated and angry when somebody on a motorcycle passes me by on the highway at 160 miles an hour. Fucker. I get really irritated, maybe because it's unsafe or whatever. And then I think, well, maybe this guy is on the way to visit his grandmother who's dying in the hospital. That's probably not true, right? But it helps me to calm down right away. Helps me to be more empathic. Not going to work all the time. If they're passing you like this, they're not on the way to the hospital. And thirdly, remember that empathy works. Remember, it's a matter of effectiveness. Remember Daryl Davis, this black activist who, by being empathic, was able to influence people to leave the Ku Klux Klan. Thirdly, rationality. There's a lot of irrationality, or a lack of thinking at least, in this movement, I think. I don't know if you know about McDonald's testing a vegan burger in Finland, and if it's a success, they will spread it. And there's a lot of opinions on Facebook. Vegans have an opinion about everything. And they give their opinion about this too. And I would like people to have opinions that are based on good arguments and facts. and not just on gut feeling. I see so many people say like, ugh, McDonald's, McDeath, McEvil. I'm not going to pee in their toilets even. And it's not a very rational way of thinking about this. I'm not going to tell you what to think about this. I just would like to ask you to think about it at all. We can think about good arguments, bad arguments. We can think about pro and against arguments to have a solid, a good, a founded opinion about this. But what I most wanted to talk about on the level of, or within the domain of rationality is purity. I think the focus we attach or we give to purity is often quite irrational. And I want to introduce 3 ideas. The first one is that there's no such thing as 100% vegan. The second one is that a 99% vegan should be able to call themselves vegan. And the third one is that there is such a thing as a 95% vegan. Let me explain these briefly. 100% vegan, I think you agree that a vegan doesn't eat steak and doesn't eat cream and butter and eggs and dairy in general. But does a vegan also consistently always and every time avoid all these small ingredients? Always. If you say yes, then I could tell you, well, then you have to study the book Veganissimo. Veganissimo is described there as one who is vegan to the highest possible standard. And this book contains 300 pages of animal or potentially animal ingredients. So I could learn this book by heart and apply it and then tell all of you that you're not vegan. Right? And we could play this game all day long. And we can be so vegan that we don't watch Kevin Bacon movies. But it's not a useful game to play. It's a distraction. Secondly, a 95% vegan, it's a thing. It should be a thing. Some people say, no, it's not. It's like being pregnant. Being vegan is like being pregnant. You are either pregnant or you're not. You're vegan or you're not. I don't think that's a good way to look at things. I think the way the raw foodists talk about their diet, I'm like 80% raw, 90% raw. That's a useful concept. You just indicate that how you eat and that you're on the way and that you're not entirely there, but you make it clear to people what they should expect of you, what you expect of them in terms of eating. And thirdly, the 99% vegan. What is a 99% vegan? Some people would say it doesn't exist. Well, I'd say that's a vegan who makes rare exceptions whenever they think it's necessary for some reason. So for instance, could be a vegan who goes to their grandmother twice a year and grandmother bakes cookies and the cookies contain some eggs and this vegan eats them. And maybe the grandmother is 99 years old and she's going to die any moment. And that's why, out of respect or whatever, they do that. I'm not going to do that, but if somebody wants to do that, I'm not going to call them out for not being vegan. That's the idea, that's the message. Or maybe pragmatic exceptions, maybe in some cases it's much better not to make a fuss when you have a little bit of doubt about a tiny ingredient in some food during a business meeting. Sometimes it might be better to just not say anything about maybe there being a bit of butter in there or something. You can all decide that for yourselves, but if somebody has that idea to make pragmatic exceptions because they have their eye on the results and the effect, I'm not going to call them out for not being a true vegan. This is your number of meals in a year. If one of them is not vegan, this one, then, well, because this contains still plants, potatoes and vegetables, then you would still be 99.7% vegan. That's vegan enough. That's not unvegan enough to be able to oust somebody from the club, right? That would be stupid. I'm worried about meat eaters saying what is this? What are you doing? This is irrational. I can't follow you. I'm worried about alienating vegans. Vegans saying I left this Facebook group because people were so rigid and so etc. I'm worried about recidivism. People leaving the vegan club because they say it's too difficult, but it's only as difficult as we make it. And I'm worried about making a small group smaller still. That's not the way I think to go at. So rather than seeing things in black and white, we should appreciate that there's a lot of gray in between them. Gray that is strategically very important because these people drive up demand and supply. If you want to be consistent, then I think it's better to be consistent with goals and results than with rules. Give you an example. Suppose you go to one place, there's only one place in one town that you're at with a non-vegan friend, and this non-vegan friend wants to try a meal. He wants to join you, and you know that the vegan burger they have there is dreadful and nasty. But they have a great vegetarian burger. Which one do you recommend, or which one do you buy for them? If you're consistent with rules, you would buy the vegan burger. I think if you're consistent with results, you buy the vegetarian burger. Do you know what a BTE is? It's a bad tofu experience. If you have a bad tofu experience, this sets you back a lot. This like alienates you. This is going to drive you further away from veganism more than ever. So it's really important that you give people good taste experiences. Positivity, finally. I think we should be more like dogs. I think that optimism is a moral duty. You can do more when you're an optimist, when you're positive. You can be recruiting more people. You can be more sustainable for yourself. You don't have to be naive, of course. Not everything is going to be fine. Sometimes you have to resist. But in general, I would recommend that we try to be positive towards people. It's not easy. Like this guy, again, it's not easy to be positive towards a person like that. It's not easy to try to understand where they're coming from. One thing that helps is this saying, maybe a bit cheesy, those who deserve love the least need it the most. Another thing to look at it positively is to consider that we are the first species to question our own diet. That's a wonderful thing, a wonderful place in evolution to have arrived at. We are the first to do that. There's never been a conference of tigers considering how they can stop eating rabbits or whatever they eat. And you can look at it like this. Until recently, in cosmological terms, we were hanging out in trees. And it's only since the last 100 or 500 years or so that we have some sort of morality and culture and science. And there's possibly a very long future ahead of us. And there's no reason to think that it's necessarily going to be negative. We can make a lot of advances. We can develop, we can evolve in terms of morality, spirituality, culture, science, technology. Potentially, we'll be able to do a lot of good in the future. And I think we're poised to do that. If you don't believe me, and if tonight you'll be depressed after having watched one more video of the cruelty that people do towards animals, then you can do this. You can enter pictures to restore your faith in humanity. And then you'll find images like this fireman giving water to a koala in a forest fire. Or these people rescuing a goat from the water. Or these police officers somewhere in Asia helping ducks to cross the road. Or this guy giving a cat back to his person. And you see that the cat doesn't care all that much. But I think that the love on this woman's face is very real. And it's the love for a creature of another species. And that's special. And I know it's not a pig or a cow there. And I know that very well she may have pork or chicken on her plate that night. But this, what you see here, is very real. This love, this emotion, it's very real. And I think most people care about animals. And that's something that should inspire us, something that should give us hope, and that's a place to start. Thank you.
That video brought you to tears. You're not alone. That was emotional, but that was very powerful. And drop a comment down below. What are your thoughts on this video? Do you believe in empathy? Have you watched the Empathy podcast? Are you trying to create a vegan world? What are your thoughts on this? Does this resonate with you? Do you want to make some changes? Are you looking to make an impact? These are the questions in the comments down below. See you guys soon.